some of you might like to take your melt and pour soaps a step further and use some glitters and some mineral shimmers or pigments on them. So we're going to take a look at how to use them in 3 ways. We've got 2 ranges we're going to use. One is the mineral shimmer powders. These are Renaissance powders. And the second is our Renaissance cosmetic glitters. So you can use them in 3 ways, and let's go through those 3. We'll start with the ones that need setting first, and then we'll move on to the others. So for the first one, I'm going to take the glitter powders, the cosmetic glitter powders, and I'm going to mix them through the melted soap. So firstly, just to get us going, I'll just take a little bit of the clear soap, and that can be melting while we're choosing our colours. Okay, let's pop that in the microwave, just the chopped up Renaissance clear melt and pour soap. Put that on for 25 seconds. Okay, now I don't want to put too much colour in my clear soap because I really want to see the sparkles, but I might like just a dot of colour. So you can either pick up your colour in your glitters, or you can use just a dot of colour. I want to make this a really girly one, so I'm going to choose the pink and the purple cosmetic glitter, and I'm also going to choose a really nice sort of girly fragrance that I'd like. So let me see, perhaps one of the florals. I think I'll use a rose geranium. That's a really lovely fragrant oil, one of the Renaissance fragrant oils. Okay, that's not quite melted, but nearly. Let's get a stirring stick. Give that a little melt. Now you've got a couple of ways of using your glitter. One is you could just tip it in the mould, but it will stick in your mould and you'll lose a little bit of that. So I'm going to mix it through the melted soap. Firstly, I'll add the fragrance. You can do this to the melted soap, or you can put it on the soap and pop it in the microwave, whichever you prefer. That's so pretty, the rose geranium, such a lovely fragrance. Okay, now it's not quite melted. Oops, slopped a little bit of it. So we'll just pop that back in for another 10 seconds. And while we're doing that, I'll get my pink and my purple glitters ready. Now if you really want to make this pop, we're just going to make the whole thing clear and have a look what it looks like. But you could make a layer of clear with your glitters in it, and then once that was set, spritz it with your isopropyl alcohol and pour a layer of white at the back. I might even have a go. We'll see what we get time to do. Okay, that's a bit too hot. That overflowed in the microwave with that 10-second timing. Okay, so we've got my clear soap here. And it smells with the fragrant oil. I'm just going to take quite a generous lump of the purple and another stick. Quite a generous blob of the pink as well. Okay, get the stirring stick and stir that all through so it goes all beautifully sparkly. If you wanted to add just 1 dot of pink or purple at this stage to give your soap a colour, you could. And then just taking your mould, I can't tip it up to show you, but maybe as I pour it you could have a look and we'll see how it goes. Actually, that mould's got some soap on the side. Never mind, we'll see how it goes. Just pour it in here, just a thin layer of it. I'm not going to use it all up. It has a sort of a pinky purple tinge because of the colours. Spritz it with the alcohol to get rid of the bubbles. Really, really beautifully sparkly in there. And we're going to let that set just over there. We'll move the glitters out of the way. And I think I'd like to put a white background on it because I think it'll help you see the colours even more, but you'll get that beautiful sparkle without it anyway. The next way that you can use, remember, make a mess, don't clean it up, just leave it till it sets and it'll all come off. The next way is that we want to use the cosmetic mineral shimmers directly into your mould. So for this one I've chosen the Kuan Yin Buddha mould, and I'm going to take the gold mineral powder with a dry paintbrush. It's a little hard for you to see up close, but I'll do my best. You can zoom in if you want to. And I'm just going to dab that all over the Buddha. Now I want to be careful that I don't flick it, because if I flick it, it's going to end up all over the mould. And with the mineral powders, because they're so fine, they are a little bit statically charged anyway, and they will stick to the silicone pretty easily if you're not careful with them. So I'm just trying to dab it all around the inside of the mould without getting it up the sides. Now there will be a few little sparkles, but never mind. And I want to put it on fairly thickly, because what I'm trying to achieve is the illusion of a gold Buddha. Now this could be a single pour mould if that's how I wanted it to be. And see how I've got a bit too much powder in her face? So now I'm just trying to get that out of her face, otherwise I'll get little pockets and little divots in there where the soap won't go in to get the definition of my mould. I've just got a damp sponge that I'm wiping that on, just to try and get a little bit out of her face. Now I could just do a single pour, I could just pour the whole thing, but what's going to happen if I do it that way is that as I pour it, the gold is going to come out of the Buddha and into the rest of the mould, and that's not the effect that I'm after. So I'm just going to take a wee bit of, actually it doesn't matter what soap you use because you're not going to see it because of the gold. So why don't we just simply use our clear sparkly soap that we used for the last bit, because that's melted. So what I'm going to do is just pour it into the indent of the Buddha, and it'll set really quickly because it's going to be a small soap. If you wanted to use it as a guest soap, you could even just stop there and you'd have a beautiful little gold Buddha. Now I can't tip that up and show you because it's runny, but we'll just leave that there to set. And then what I'm going to create is my second cavity of soap around that. So I'll use the white soap. I want enough in here to give me enough for the whole rest of the cake of soap. You could melt it in a big jug if you want to, but I'm just melting what we actually need. And of course that didn't really have any fragrance. It'll have a little bit of the rose geranium for the first. So we may as well go with that. Let's use rose geranium in this level as well, so we've got a continuity of fragrance throughout. So a little bit of rose geranium in the white soap. Doesn't matter if your fragrance goes in before it's melted or after. Just smell it. Make sure you're happy with the smell. Okay. And so we've got one with the shimmer powder. Now you could have used the shimmer instead of the glitter. It wouldn't have mattered. You could mix that through. One painted directly on. And then for our last option, I'm going to paint directly onto the finished soap. So I'm going to choose the Pearl Shimmer Powder. Be careful at this point because you don't want these all to tip over. Okay, Pearl Shimmer Powder is one of my favourite ones. So you may recall earlier today, if you're watching some of the other videos, we made the little amethyst cluster, clear soap and purple with the amethyst mould. So what I'm going to do is with the Pearl Shimmer, just make sure your paintbrush is clean, take a little bit of the pearl powder and very gently dust it over the top. Now you don't want it to look sparkly, and with gemstones you want to get it deeper in some divots and not so much in the other. So you're really just kind of trying to dust your finished soap. And you can see in some pockets you'll have more. Brush it all off so it's not really sparkly, because we kind of want it to be dusty rather than sparkly. And I'm going to make a steampunk mould in another video, so if you'd like to have a look at some more special effects by dusting on afterwards, have a look for the steampunk soap video and see if you like that one as well. So we're just dusting all over the top of the amethyst to give it that. You don't have to use pearl, you could use any colour you like, but I kind of like the pearl because it gives a frosty effect to the crystals. Okay, and there's our frosted amethyst soap. Let's wipe the shimmers off the bench so that we don't get them in our next project. And we've got our little starfish. We made him in an earlier class as well, an earlier demonstration. What colour would go well with the starfish? You know what, I think I'll use copper. And I actually have a copper in a plastic bag already open because we used it a minute ago, so I'll go for this one. And I'm just going to take a tiny bit and just, I don't want big clumps of it, so I'm just trying to touch him in little paces and then just brush him in patches so he gets a nice sort of coppery effect in some places and not in the others. Get too much, it can look, it can look a wee bit lumpy. And you know what, it's all trial and error, so don't worry about just having a go, seeing how it comes out. It might come out beautifully, it might come out not so beautifully, never mind, you'll have another go next time and create something different. It really doesn't matter. But what you'll find is when you put your shimmers into your soaps, particularly those that have got a really nice depth, it will add just a little bit of oomph to them. So here is, that's just a wee bit. You could go a lot more if you wanted to, but here is just our starfish with a little bit of the copper shimmer all over him. You could use some more, but that'll just give you an idea of the definition. So we'll pop him down there. Now, I'd like to show you another one that my daughter did. This one's actually been packaged up, so I'll take it out here. She made it in a 2-part pour, so a little bit of green first and a little bit of pink, and it was a pretty mould, but it just wasn't special enough. So she used the opalescent shimmer powder and she painted all over the rose on the outside, like we just did with the starfish, just to give a more three-dimensional quality to her soap, so that the petals on that little rose petal, the little rose flowers, let's pop it that way for you, really pop and really have that beautiful depth. And there's another little rose she did with some silver one, if you can zoom in on those ones as well. Okay, is this set up enough? Not quite. Yes, this one has, because it's just a small amount. So, this one's not quite set up enough yet to pour, it's still a little soft. This one's warm, but it has set. So if you have a look now, you can see the gold. Because we use a clear soap, you'll be able to see through it. Okay, so we're ready for our next pour on that one. We'll take the white soap out of the oven. This is the one that we scented with the rose geranium. It's not fully melted, but that's okay. It'll give me enough, and I don't want to make it hot because it will melt the layer that I've got underneath it. Okay. Now, whenever you're doing a 2-part pour, always spritz with alcohol so that you don't get a slip in between the two. I'm going to hold back that white soap so the lump doesn't fall in there, and I'll just pour that in and around the mould all over the other soap. Now it's not full enough, that's going to be too thin and my soap's too lumpy, so what I'm going to do is just make that last bit again. Oops, daisy, have a ledge. Give it another 10 seconds and that'll just give me a little bit of a thicker pour, and where it's a bit lumpy that'll smooth it all out so it'll look really nice again. Okay, that's really melty. Just in case, yeah, see that's already firmed up, so just we'll give that a spritz also and pour the melted soap into that one. Now the reason that can also be a good idea sometimes is if you're worried about the layers melting between the two, the more hot soap you put on the top, the more it'll melt the bottom one. So if you put just a little bit of white soap or coloured soap and let it set, then your bottom layer underneath with your colours isn't going to melt. Spritz that with alcohol just to get rid of the bubbles if you want to. And we'll leave that one to set. Now, how's this doing? It's firmed up enough for us to put a base in it if it's not too hot. So, I'm nearly finished. Down, that would be okay. Let me see. Yeah, you can't. Can you see the sparkles in this one? If you have a close look, you'll see the sparkles in it. So if you were to leave that just as a clear soap, that's exactly how that would come out. And it's really effective and it would look good. But we're just wanting to pop the colours a little bit more, so we're going to add a little bit of white on the next layer as well. So we only need a little bit of the white. It's not all fully melted. Still got enough rose geranium scent in it to give me what I'm needing. I'll just mix it a little bit. That'll cool it down a tiny bit, but it'll melt some of the others through as well. Okay. And now, oops, now we take the sparkly one Spritz it so that you don't get a slip in between your layers. Squeeze this so then your lumps don't come out, and just gently drizzle that all over the first layer. Now I'm not 100% sure whether it's fully set, but we'll see when we unmold it how that looks. Okay, so spritz to get rid of the bubbles. I'm going to leave that here to set, and we'll come back and unmold these and have a look at the finished effects in a little while. They should have had enough time to set up now, so let's see how they're going. So let's begin with the gold Kuan Yin Buddha first. To release from your silicone moulds, just press it out gently away from the sides and release. And pop, and you have a beautiful gold Buddha set inside a white soap or any other colour that you wanted to make it. So we'll pop this one down. Now, the thing with using the shimmers directly in your mould is you do end up with a little bit of the shimmer powder left in the mould. If you're going to use it again for the same purpose next time, it doesn't matter, but otherwise really the only way to get that out is to wash and wash and wash and wash, or to pour soap, melt, pour soap, melt, pour soap, and eventually it will come out. So if you only think you're doing it once, you might have to weigh up whether you want to do that. That looks great. That came out really well. I'll let you have a close-up of that at the end. Now this one was our one we made with the glitters in the soft mould, so let's just release this all the way around. And you might remember we put a bit of white behind this. Just press and you'll get an airlock. Move it around until your soap drops out. Oh, so pretty. And you've got your white, so you can see on the side you've got your white base which pops your colours a little bit. It'll look better when you have a close-up on this, but on the front we've got the purple and the blue glitter, cosmetic glitter powder in the clear soap. So in summary, if you want to use your shimmer powders or your glitter powders in order to make your soaps really pop, really to have a little bit of sparkle, 3 ways. 1 is to dry brush it on once your soap is finished. 2, to paint it into the mould and pour your soap in, and 3 is to mix the shimmer or mix the glitter through your soap and pour it into the mould for your finished effect to have that lovely sparkle through it. If you've got some other ideas, play, have fun, take a look at the steampunk video.